Welcome to the CHOW Podcast, hosted by Animal Friends of Wyoming County, where our mission is to help care for animals held by the Wyoming County Animal Shelter and promote responsible pet care in Wyoming County. Thank you for joining us. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the CHOW Podcast by Animal Friends of Wyoming County. I am your host, Sam Goodell, the president of Animal Friends of Wyoming County. And today we're going to be talking about veterinary medicine. The actual title of our podcast is The Ever-Changing Landscape of Veterinary Medicine. Before we get into it, though, some quick news at the time of this recording. Animal Friends Wyoming County wants to give a big congratulations to the Wyoming County SPCA for receiving a $1.5 million grant from the Golisano Foundation, their Bailey and Friends grants. So congratulations from one nonprofit to another. You're definitely going to need it with the new laws that are going to be implemented in Wyoming County and New York State at large. So congratulations. All right, so as we're getting into this, before I introduce our special guest for today, I have my co-host here with me, Miss Kelly Shearing.
Hello, I'm Kelly Shearing. I'm good. I'm the media director here at the Wyoming County Animal Shelter. I enjoy and love doing all the videos for you to see what dogs are available for adoption. And then once they get adopted, I post the pictures of their happy homes and do the reels at the end of the month, which have become popular, and I love doing it. So everything's great. I'm glad I was home this time from my back and forth to the lake property to do this video or do this podcast with you guys. So
yeah, well, we're very happy to have you here. You give a great insight whenever we do a podcast episode from your perspective and your background, and we're definitely going to need a little bit of that today when we're talking about this topic. So let's get right into it. I'm going to have our guest introduce himself a little bit, but I will say right in the beginning a very big disclaimer. He is my boss.
I didn't know that, Sam.
So, welcome, Dr. Peter Hecht of Perry Vet.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. I appreciate being able to be here to speak with you today. It's a great thing that you're doing, and I am a veterinarian with Perry Veterinary Clinic. I've been a veterinarian for 37 years, all with Perry Veterinary Clinic. I received my education in North Carolina at North Carolina State University, did my undergrad and vet school there. I've had a passion for animals ever since I was a young lad. I went to day camp, rode horses. My family has always had dogs. And I also spent some time as a young teen actually coming to Perry and riding with one of the late veterinarians, Dr. Norman Skinner, who was a great bovine veterinarian, and I really enjoyed what I saw him do, and also spent time with my local home vet when I was growing up in East Aurora, New York. So I'm from the area, even though I did have a little bit of a hiatus in North Carolina, but I'm happy to be here. I've loved working at this practice and with the people, the clients, and of course the pets and the animals. It's been a great career. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to this episode and for joining us and doing your educational video. If you haven't gotten a chance to view it yet, guys, it's on our YouTube and Rumble page at the time of this airing. So please go to our social media, subscribe to it so you can get up to date on the latest news on that. And we're very blessed to have you here to do this podcast,
Absolutely.
sir.
Glad to be here.
So what made you interested in becoming a veterinarian?
Well, as I alluded to initially, Sam, I just felt really comfortable with animals. My family had always had dogs, and I was drawn to that. So as a young lad, I approached our local veterinarian then in East Aurora about spending some time with him and just seeing what he did. And he absolutely took me on under his wing, and so I spent quite a bit of time in the summers when I wasn't in school riding with him. He was a mixed animal vet, so he did both small and large animal, and I got to see what a veterinarian did, which is a lot different than what we do now. I also, through a family friend, was recommended that I spend some time with Dr. Skinner at Perry, and I phoned Perry and was able to spend some time with him, going on farm calls. And as I mentioned too, I spent some time going to day camp, riding horses, and I've always really just loved animals. They've been a part of my life since I was an infant, really.
Awesome. That's cool. So in the process of everything, the changing landscape of vet medicine that we're going to be talking about today, have you noticed a lot of a difference from when you started versus where it's got to now? Like how big of an impact would you say before we get into the nitty gritty?
I think there's been a great change in veterinary medicine since I first started. There's been a number of advances in veterinary medicine, technically. The animals have become much more a part of the lives of the families and people clients that we deal with. And of course, now with the spread of information so rapidly via the internet and social media, news travels fast, both good and bad news, both credible
Absolutely.
and non-credible news.
Yes.
So those types of things have created a huge change in veterinary medicine from when I started.
Yeah, I can imagine, because if I remember right, was it 1987 that you started in
Correct.
veterinary medicine?
Correct.
Yep, and now fast forward to here, 2024, or at the time of this airing is 2025. So a lot has definitely changed, not only just in veterinary medicine, but to what you just spoke of too. Social media has now become a thing. Online care, telemedicine, a whole slew of different tools at your disposal, but also some disadvantages too that can arrive from that.
Correct.
So, and speaking of that, society has kind of changed and warped its mind, or not warped its mind in a negative way, but has changed its opinion and view of what a companion animal is. I imagine since the 80s to now that people are now deeming them as like a member of their family. They're a lot more attentive to them. They're not just kept in like the barn anymore or outdoors. They've become your snugglers in bed now. So
when I grew up on a dairy farm in Gainesville, Wyoming County, we had generally at least 5 dogs or so or more, because we lived just up the road from a swamp, and it was between the farm and the swamp was a great drop-off spot, which still happens in this day and age. And as animal control will tell you, there are certain hot spots, especially on county line areas, where there's drop-offs. But back then, that was a big drop-off. Now that our farm is really not running with animals, we do the crops and stuff, but we don't get that many drop-offs. But back then, my dad being a farmer, we didn't allow dogs in the house. So they weren't really technically ours. They were just drop-offs. They could come and go as they pleased. We fed them, watered them, gave them care while they were on the farm, but they didn't come in the house. They stayed out. A couple of them snuck in once in a while by one of us kids. I'm not going to name which one, but all of a sudden there'd be one up in a bedroom or something.
yeah, well, you actually brought up not to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
actually brought up a very good point. And for anyone who's listening to this or watching this, by the way, to our listening audience, I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this, this is also not only an audio podcast, but a video podcast. So go onto our Rumble and YouTube page and you'll be able to see us instead of just hear us. So,
which makes it a little nerve-wracking, to be honest with you.
we're very new into this, yes. But Kelly, you just brought up a very good point about we're in such a very rural area in Wyoming County. It's always joked around that there's more cows than people in Wyoming County, which
It's
is
true.
a statistic fact.
It is true.
Yeah. So for anyone who's watching or listening to this that is from a city-like environment and they think, oh, counties are a little more backwards thinking and backwards minded, Wyoming County is actually kept up with the times too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might be a little slower because we do have more of a farm lifestyle as opposed to the running around city lifestyle and the ever growing, ever changing landscape of that. But we still out in the country here treat our animals the way you would treat them in the city.
Absolutely. They're our babies. This is not Little House on the Prairie. So actually, when I went to college in the 80s, I'll date myself a little bit, but there was some girls from the city, and we would sit around in the dorm like the first day or evening or whatever and introduce ourselves. And, I said I was from Wyoming County, and one of the girls actually had heard of it. She'd been to Letchworth State Park. So she goes, "Do you have indoor plumbing and running water?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, we do. Thank you." And I said that back then. I go, "This isn't Little House on the Prairie." And my name's not Laura Ingalls, but we did. And we've evolved even a lot more since then. So, but there's no way I would let any of my animals stay outside on purpose ever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, even piggybacking off of that, the technical advances, even in a rural area like us, for small animal clinics, and you can be able to attest to this, Dr. Peter Heck, because you're from Perry Vet Clinic, which is, in our area, it might look big, but in the retrospect of the animal medicine world, you're a small practice still, just
Correct.
satellite locations.
Correct. I feel like we are still, one of my former partners used to say, we're large enough to serve you, but small enough to care.
Yeah.
I really feel like that is what Perry Vet is. We're locally owned and operated. We've been locally owned and operated for 100 years. And we're not corporate. So many of our clients are our friends, with people we've known for years, and you develop relationships with them, both in the clinic and on the farm. And it's a wonderful environment. The practice has definitely evolved, though, much more specialized in both large and small animal. Back when I started, the two were almost blended together. The small and the large were served out of the same building, the same facility. You had farmers and small animal clients coming to the same front counter. Now everything's been separated out, and the care has become much more specialized in those disciplines. So,
Yes, that's very true. You do have a handful of veterinarians, as you were at one point yourself, that dabbed a little bit in both the large and small animal world.
correct.
But that's true. If you do go to the Perry Vet Clinic, when you walk into the small animal clinic and small animal part of it, you get veterinarians there, like Dr. Kendra Sims is a great example. We've had her on the podcast before talking about Lyme disease. She specializes in certain other things for a small practice. You really get, at least at the Perry Vet Clinic, real good quality care that they know what they're talking about, and they know when they're looking at your pet and examining them for a thing, what they can and can't do and their limits, and they're very frank and honest with you. You still
Absolutely.
get just what you said there, that care involved with it.
Right. And I think that's communication, of course, is the key, but honesty is the key. You know, it's the best policy.
Absolutely.
So you just have to be forthright and knowledgeable, but realistic as well. So
Which I think sometimes that taints some people, and I've heard it before, like, I don't like a certain vet, or I don't like this and that. And when I've heard the name, I'll be like, wait, who? And I love them. I can name people, not the specific topic, but Liz Wolf has been my primary veterinarian for many years, and honest, upfront. Some people don't care for that. Maybe they want more things done, but they're just honest about it. You can't shake a stick at that. Steve Stoddard is very knowledgeable and has been my orthopedic doctor for dogs and stuff for a long time. Both great people. And it's unfortunate, like, sometimes people don't like the brutally honest stuff, and it might taint their opinions, but that's what I would prefer than dragging something out. And I'll say this, Steve Stoddard told me many years ago, I had a Rottweiler that was only 5 years old, and he was my son, was 2 when I got him. He was his first dog, loved him. He was a great dog, and he started getting issues with just holding a tennis ball in his mouth, and I thought maybe he had an abscessed tooth. So I took him in, and we saw Steve, and Steve diagnosed him with what's called Myasthenia gravis, if I'm saying that correctly, which is like Lou Gehrig's disease, but in dogs. And it was a pretty rapid progression, even faster than Steve had originally thought. He was put on prednisone and stuff. And Steve told me back then, it's going to be hard because he is a young dog and you haven't had that time with him. But the one thing we can do for our furry family members is to graciously and humanely allow them to peacefully go to sleep. And we can't do that for our human companions. Our humans have to suffer because euthanizing a human is illegal. So that's one thing that I always carried with me is euthanasia as far as humanely doing it. And we just can't help things sometimes. Some things happen and we just can't wish it away. It's just how it is. So
it's the inevitable part of the job, and we certainly, in most cases, outlive our pets, and it's still difficult, but we try to make it humane and as easy as possible on the client and, of course, the pet. So.
Yeah, exactly. And to anyone that's hearing a ring in the background or dogs barking in the background, by the way, we are live at the Wyoming County Animal Shelter. We proudly do our taping here, so you definitely get the experience what the shelter is kind of experiencing during its open hours. But, well, to jump off from that for the adapting and the changing of medicine and society's viewpoints on companion animals and all that, I was able to pull up some interesting statistics regarding veterinary clinics and vet practices, veterinarians, and I know we're going to be touching upon some of these topics here, but a couple of interesting facts I didn't know about vet offices or vet clinics in particular is that vets hold about 89,200 jobs as of 2019, by the way, in America. Also, as of 2019, there are 13,323 veterinary students. 77% of veterinarians are companion animal vets, which specifically help with your small animals, your dogs, cats, rabbits, things of that nature. And then 79% of veterinarians work full-time, where 21% of them work part-time. And because of, well, actually, according to this, estimated in 2020, the pet industry has reached close to $100 billion industry. So it's not, I want to use that fact and jump off of that to say that this business isn't just like making money or anything like that. You could look at that view number and you could think, oh my gosh, they're making a lot of money, things like that. Vet clinics really do, and veterinarians, they do care. They do care for your pet. You are getting good quality care from your veterinarians. And so I guess to piggyback off of that, let's talk about the importance of establishing a primary veterinarian for your companion animal. Any benefits? What would you say? How would you pitch it to someone who's a little skeptical of, do I need a vet, really?
Absolutely, you need a vet. You need to establish a good relationship with your veterinarian, establish a veterinary client-patient relationship to be able to take the best care of your pet. In this day and age, it's very difficult, as many people probably know, to be able to get your pet to an emergency situation to be seen. I've heard horror stories of many people not being able to get into an emergency clinic.
There's not a lot out there for after hours.
That's right.
It's
heart-wrenching.
just crazy.
Although I did hear that Rochester now just got a huge grant to help up their service, so that will certainly be helpful. But in my mind, preventative care is where it's at. You have to be able to provide for your pet the basic preventative needs. And one of those is to make sure that at least annually you have a veterinarian examine your animal and go over that animal and find out how you're taking care of that animal if you're providing for optimal care. Because as the old adage goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we'd rather avoid having to go to emergency clinics and avoid that situation. Many emergencies are avoidable. Some aren't, of course. But that's, I think, where the key is, to be able to provide for your pet for a healthy lifestyle to prevent disease and other conditions that could really lead to the animal's demise.
Yes, yeah. So when your veterinarian is recommending a certain vaccine or flea tick preventative, they're not doing it to see how much money they could squeeze out of you or anything like that. They're really doing it because you're either at a high risk area for certain things like ticks, or in Wyoming County's case, I know we've seen an influx of Lyme disease, things like that. So PeriVet recommends you get your preventative medicine to get that started. Talk to your veterinarian about if a Lyme vaccine is good for your pet, because there is something like that available to you. Any tools that you can use to prevent something, it might sound costly at first, but in the long run, if your pet gets something like this, it could be 10 times more expensive.
If you look at when you get if you get a puppy, your biggest expenses are the first 6 months of their life, making sure they have all their puppy shots, they're spayed or neutered. I hope people are like spaying, neutering, because that would help population control. Dogs getting hit by cars that are looking for a mate. There's all sorts of stuff with spaying and neutering. But if you get all that stuff done, that's your biggest expense. And then after that, if your yearly, annual visit, keep everything up to date, you shouldn't have the big expenses. But when it goes to people keep getting multiple dogs, then your expenses are going to get larger. And a lot of people can't afford it. I'm retired, but I have a decent retirement. I really thought long and hard before I got my second dog, because I wanted to make sure financially I was going to be able to make sure Gemma had just as much treatment as Tucker did. I mean, I can do it and stuff, so I do have the second dog, but there's people getting multiple dogs that they can't really afford for the treatment. So you do have to be mindful of that. This is your family members now. This is just like, I'm not going to say they're just like your children, because they are they're a dog or a cat or whatever, but they are still part of your family, and you have to have the veterinarian care, just like you would take your child to a doctor if they were sick or if they just needed their vaccinations and things up to date.
Yeah.
So
Far more cost effective to do it that way as opposed to have an emergency and have to pay an extreme amount of money to get them under control. The other thing, Sam, I wish people would take advantage more is health insurance for pets. I think that's a great way for people to kind of budget expense a little bit. There are all types of insurance available out there for people. You can go from anything from just very basic policy to something that covers just about everything. And of course, the price will vary, but that's a nice way to kind of make it so that you're not strapped suddenly with a huge bill because your dog got hit by a car or some catastrophe happened. So that's.
Can I ask you this question though, Peter? Is every veterinarian so if you carried insurance, this is something that I don't know for sure, and and maybe they don't out there, but does all insurances get covered by every single veterinarian, or is your veterinarian, like if you go to Perry or if you go to Nunde or you go somewhere, is that specific? Should you find out who they carry? Like we
Typically, what happens with the insurance policies that we've dealt with is the people will pay us for the service.
Okay.
They submit that bill to their insurance company and they get reimbursed for it. So that's how that works.
Okay.
Yeah, which actually that benefits everyone in the long run, because as I'm sure looking into this as a veterinary professional yourself, for a clinic to be able to handle paperwork, the everything regarding insurance, getting those claims and all that's done, you're making sure the services and your people, your employees are being cared for and taken care of and all that. But at the same time, those who can't afford the bills or probably need why you got insurance to begin with is to help the offset the costs, they're still getting reimbursed and they're working with their insurance companies.
But they should still be aware that the upfront costs have to be covered. So
Yes.
Even if you have pet insurance, you really should start a little savings. I mean, everybody should have a savings if they have pets. You just put a certain amount in every month and let that grow. And if you don't use it, well, you take your pet on vacation. I don't know, but it's there in case of an emergency.
Yeah.
So you have it.
There's even a bill in New York State now that one of the representatives is putting forth that people can actually tap into their health savings accounts and flexible spending accounts for themselves to pay for their pets.
Yeah.
So this is just some new thinking there, and for service animals potentially that, or people who are veterans, for example, they could use unlimited funds from their HSA or FSA accounts.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, anything that would help, because I know someone like me, I do have a health savings account, but I don't have any chronic illnesses. I'm relatively healthy. I'm not jumping off of skyscrapers or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about any impending potential risks for me, so I just build up my account. Someone like me could utilize something like that if that was available for me, for my pets. And another thing we'll touch upon regarding this while we're on the topic of the budget, and we don't mean this in like any harsh way or negative way, but owning a pet has a lot of responsibility to it, and it's a lifelong commitment for that pet's duration of its life, the 10 to 15 years that you have the cat or the dog, whatever it is. But owning a pet is also not a right. So It's nice when we think about getting a pet and we're like, oh, we want something to snuggle up with us. We want a companion type thing. We totally get it. And those are all valid reasons and why there are service dogs that exist for people that need those. But when you own a dog, you also have to think about the medical expense of that dog. Are you going to be able to take care of that dog for the 10, 15 years? The first 10 years you might not run into any emergencies, everything is great. But as they get a little bit older, you need to do extra blood work, you need to do extra care, you need to make sure that they're comfortable in their senior years and things like that. So definitely be mindful when you're looking to adopt or purchase a pet, whichever way you go. To realize that when you get that puppy, it's not going to stay puppy forever. It's going to run around, and not always are you going to be able to have 100% control of your pet if circumstances are there, like it's not on a leash for some crazy reason. Be prepared for medical expenses as they come. Make sure you're taking care of your pet adequately, getting its vaccines on time, having a good relationship with your veterinarian to communicate, hey, my dog just ingested like some raisins. What do I do? Because that happens far too often, and not everyone can afford an emergency vet visit to come in to take care of that. We understand some people are on like a fixed income, or circumstances in your life change where that happens, but always keep in mind the pets that you bring into your environment and into your life, that how are they going to be benefiting or being disadvantaged by it, because we don't want a potential cruelty case to come about due to neglect because you just can't afford something. That's one thing. There are laws about that, and we don't want to see anyone getting in trouble with anything like that or having to worry about it, So the balancing the budget for owning a pet, and to speak upon that, vet clinics, emergency vet clinics, they do cost a lot of money to go to, and we just touched upon how if you're out of the county, if you're out of your home environment and you have no choice to go to an emergency vet, you need to get the care that your pet needs, of course, but things can get a little costly, and that's putting it very mildly. But you also have to realize, and I think Dr. Peter, you will speak this from a small animal clinic perspective compared to an emergency hospital perspective. There's overhead, there's services that they're being able to provide for you, and it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And one of the things I think at Perry that we've done very well over the years is to put money back into the business to keep evolving as the practice changes. And yes, we have lots of employees, and we have both, as I said, large and small animal businesses to run. And you got to turn the lights on every day. You got to pay for all the meds and supplies that come into the clinic. So it gets rather costly to take care of all of that. So I think that we've done a good job of managing all of that and being able to grow as a practice and serve the community even better as time goes by. So,
yeah, and for what it's worth, for Perry Vet Clinic, and you think about them as a small business type thing and the small veterinary clinic and vet service, you really do get good quality care from the staff at Perry Vet. And I think that segues into the next thing I want to bring up is, what do you view as a veterinarian should be the quality care of you, if you're talking to someone who owns a cat or a dog, that their vets should be providing for you?
Well, Sam, it certainly varies with what the client can afford in some cases. Not all cases, but some cases. The basic care would be making sure that pet is up to date on vaccines, making sure that your veterinarian is available to speak with you during office hours at least, maybe even after hours. We still have that ability to be able to speak with our clients after hours. So those are important because your veterinarian knows your pet, has your pet's records, and is best able to serve you in times of need. So it's important to develop that relationship. It's important to develop the basic care, and that could certainly be expounded upon or expanded upon depending on the situation that your pet is in, vaccine-wise, preventative-wise, depending on the risk that the pet may be at for certain diseases. So I think that's one of the important things when you go to a veterinary practice is that it is a fluid situation and things change, and the veterinarian should be able to supply at least the basic needs of that pet and then be able to expand upon that as time changes, as the pet grows, as certain disease conditions come about. Most practices, I think, should be able to respond to that, handle that, deal with that. So, and I feel like our practice we have many veterinarians who, as you mentioned earlier, are very interested in certain aspects of veterinary medicine. That's their passion. So I feel like, one of the things that we pride ourselves in is to be able to bounce questions and information off of each other. So that's very important. It's very important your veterinarian keeps up with the times. Okay, things change, diseases change, preventative changes. So your vet needs to be knowledgeable. They need to be malleable, just evolve as time goes on. So
Yeah, and one of the requirements for keeping your veterinary license, or even your veterinary technicians to keep their licenses, every year you do and please fill in the blanks here, certain credits or certain programs, things you have to do to keep up with.
Exactly. It's continuing education. I think as veterinarians in New York State, we're required to have 42 hours every 3 years. I believe that veterinary techs have to do like 24 hours every 3 years to maintain your license. So, and it's not just, we don't look at it like that. Well, I have to maintain my license, so I got to go do this continuing ed. It's very interesting to do that, and it kind of helps you stay abreast of new things that are coming about, and to be able to handle situations that maybe you weren't so well schooled on or didn't really know how to handle. We also have a very good resource called the Veterinary Information Network, which is an internet source of tremendous veterinarians throughout the country who are specialists in their own rights. And you can look things up or even pose questions, put on blood work, radiographs, things like that, and get responses to certain cases. So that's been a big help. Again, that's information technology, getting information right away. Not when I started, you'd go to the old textbooks and pour through those, and you got your first case and you say, wait a minute, Kelly, I'll be right back. And you go back and look in the book, and now you can, everything
it's harder
can be.
for some of us older folks to navigate through the computer stuff anymore, because that's not how we started our education.
That's right. So it's been great. I mean, those changes are inevitable, and I think it's really for the betterment of pet care and veterinary medicine as a whole. So,
yes, yeah, and so the quality of care. One of the things I would like to mention regarding that is your veterinarian will want to see you make sure you're getting up to date on your preventative medicine, or making sure you're up to date on your vaccines, things like that. So utilizing some services like, for instance, Tractor Supply, who hosts like vet clinics, or if there's a mobile vet out there that comes around that wants to give you vaccines, make sure things are up to date. Those are all great things, and we never want to discourage anyone from not utilizing them, making sure your pets are up to date and current. But establishing a primary veterinarian from that perspective has many more benefits in regarding to that.
Yeah, I think, Sam, to expound on that a little bit, people who go to Tractor Supply or any of those facilities sometimes really don't understand maybe what they're signing up for. And, they may be given a package of vaccines, but really have no idea what vaccine is really most appropriate for their pet. So in many cases, maybe they're being over-vaccinated, maybe they're being under-vaccinated. So it's very important to be able to have someone, a veterinarian, look at that pet and look at your situation and determine with you what's going to be most appropriate for my pet. And we keep medical records. Our medical records are now all computerized. We have 4 clinics. All of those clinics are together in their sharing of information regarding pets. So as things change, we can keep an eye on how things are progressing with your pet. Maybe things need to be tailored differently as far as vaccine protocols, things like that. When people come from those large box stores and have their vaccine certificates with them, it's very hard to determine whether, number one, it was appropriate to begin with, and secondly, are those vaccines being administered in a timely fashion? And I find that it's just, those types of records aren't kept when you go to a box store. So I feel like you get much more personalized attention, much more tailored attention when you have a veterinarian practice who is tending to your pet's needs.
Yes, and to piggyback off of that point, we actually just did an educational video recently regarding like when you are finding a reputable breeder versus a non-reputable breeder. And one of the things that I know we encounter here at the Wyoming County Animal Shelter, and in my experience in the vet world as a receptionist, that we see is a lot of breeders or people that get dogs for that reason and all that. They will do vaccines at home. They'll purchase vaccines. The only one required in New York State by law for a veterinarian to actually administer is the rabies vaccine because of rabies control. But the other vaccines you can get at some of these other big box places, like you said, other facilities. But I highly discourage anyone from doing that, only because you don't know how that vaccine is stored. You don't know how that vaccine is properly administered if it's not. And I don't know about you, but it'll frighten me if I have to start vaccinating all the dogs here at the animal shelter, just because I am not trained in that regard. I'm not a licensed vet tech or veterinarian. I don't know if I make an error or if the needle goes in too far or not enough. Is the vet even getting it? Am I going to be jeopardizing that pet's health?
Yeah, and that's the benefit of going to the veterinarian or going to the veterinary clinic, is that your pet will get an exam at that point too. So prior to the administration of the vaccine, we determine, is the pet healthy? Can it accept a vaccine? We look at the history to see what vaccines it's had and determine whether the appropriate time frame has occurred from when the last vaccine was administered. So it's just like if your doctor were to prescribe you an antibiotic, they would want to see you to be able to prescribe the correct antibiotic. Same thing with a pet. We want to make sure your pet is healthy to receive a vaccine and whether it's appropriate to be given. So
yeah, and you as a veterinarian have that knowledge, you have that expertise in knowing, all right, this type of breed needs to get this series of vaccines versus this type of breed, because it all depends on what type of animal you have. The smaller they are, the more spread out some vaccines may need to be. The bigger the breed, maybe a little bit longer for the spay and neutering, things of that nature.
Yeah,
So.
and it changes every year, Sam. I mean, there are situations in veterinary medicine where there's a lot of controversy. You mentioned spaying, neutering. There's a lot of thought out there now that waiting until 2 years of age to spay your female dog is better for their growth and, for their overall health. Well, maybe, maybe not. One of the issues you run into is that an unspayed female has an increased risk of getting mammary cancer, uterine infections, things like that. So those things can be definitely life-threatening. So
or having a oops litter.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
They'll by 2 years old, I don't know how many heat cycles they have been through. Three at least, probably.
Usually by a year of age, they will have had one heat cycle.
So by 2, I would say 3.
Maybe 3.
Heat cycles. And then, so we don't need any more unwanted litters out in this world, where our population for our dogs and cats is out of control.
I think
So
one of the
I won't go into that too much, because that could be a whole nother episode for sure. Not with the veterinarian care, but
Right.
we have way too many animals right now.
yeah, well,
Yeah, I guess I would just say, Sam, that it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's a fluid situation.
Yes.
So things change as time goes on, as veterinary medicine evolves. So does the pet's care and how we approach that. And it's very important that we keep up with that. And I think, just going somewhere that's trying to push you a vaccine, and let's face it, those folks do look at their bottom line to see what's making money and what's not. That's maybe not with the best intent for the animal. And I think the veterinarian really tries to keep the holistic approach. What's going to be best for your pet, both now and in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And as things change, if you're with your veterinarian every year, he or she can look at that pet and say, hey, things have, Fifi's lost a little bit of weight. Why don't we do this? Boy, the eyes are looking a little cloudy. Why don't we look at that? So those are things that the vet can keep track of, and we can address that before it becomes a major issue.
yeah.
Whereas if you go to the box store and get your vaccines, you're not going to get that service, and you really have no idea, okay, now my pet has a heart murmur, or so, now what do I do? Those types of things.
Yeah, because, well, a part of your job and your duty that you took an oath to is to help the health and well-being of these animals, the longevity of their life. And so establishing a primary veterinarian, keeping up to date on your annual vaccines and your annual visits alone greatly helps in the health of your pet for early detection of a disease or preventing something that is like happening right now type thing in your pet that
Right. And with the advent of more technology, we can test for more things. There's genetic testing available now to screen for certain diseases. Blood work has become key. I can remember when I first started, it was rare we did blood work on a pet. And if we did, we might have to wait a week to get the results. But now it's instantaneous. 15, 20 minutes. The great thing about your veterinarian is they are not only the doctor, they're the pharmacist, they're the ClinPath.
Right.
Everything is right
One-stop shop right there.
One-stop shop, yeah. And that's the other thing when you're looking for a vet. Make sure that they're putting something back into the clinic to keep it growing, to improving the technology, improving the service for the clients,
yeah, that's
improving the value that the clients are receiving. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I know, like from Perry Vet's perspective, at least I can say, is you do have specialized diets for animals that come in that need a special diet. Well, guess what? You don't have to go searching for like PetSmart or other places. We have something you could get started with here, or preventative medicine. They give you different options, and they tell you which ones are best for your pet or what ones they recommend. And so seeing that, don't look at don't walk into a vet clinic and think because you see so much stuff, oh my gosh, I'm paying for all that stuff type thing. It's good to have those options. It's good to have your small business vet that's able to say, not only can I diagnose your pet, I can help you treat your pet.
I would say there's a real passion in our clinics, and I say clinics because we have 4 small animal clinics. I think there's a real passion for veterinary medicine and a real passion for changing with the times and evolving as a practice, and I think that's so important for pet care and to provide the service that people really deserve and the pets deserve. So.
Yes, I agree. So moving on from, we've already laid out the reasons why you should establish a primary veterinarian, but let's talk about veterinarians in particular. One of the most staggering facts that I was not aware of until recently, within the past like 3 or 4 years, is, and correct me if I'm getting any of this statistics wrong, but veterinarians in the medical field, the whole medical field, human and animal, are the #1 most at risk for suicides, which that kind of blows my mind. But I have actually heard of stories, I've heard of things that, because working as a receptionist, you hear of someone that maybe not be in the immediate era, but in the vet world, you hear, oh, someone from this state committed suicide, things like that. So can you touch upon this this phenomenon, this statistic?
Yeah, it's rather sad, Sam, and this became much more. People became much more aware of this during the pandemic. I think there has been a lot of stress points put on veterinarians. It is an emotional job. When you think about caring for animals, you're basically caring for those people's kids, let me put it that way. And so people get very attached, as do we veterinarians get very attached to the pets and their owners. And so having to deal with difficult schedules, busyness, unfortunately difficult clients in certain circumstances, emotional decisions regarding euthanasia and things like that really takes its toll on the individual. And unfortunately, this can lead to them making that decision, to take their own life, which is a horrible thing.
It is a horrible
So So it hasn't touched me personally or our clinic, thank God. But it is certainly something that is out there and of concern. So, I think things are getting better. During the pandemic, things were just really streamlined. We were extremely busy. We weren't allowing clients to come in the buildings, and it just put a lot more stress on our staff and veterinarians. So I think that things are getting better now since we've gotten through that. And now clients are coming back into our clinics. And so I would just tell you that, we appreciate certainly dealing with the public, dealing with the clients. But like in any position, it's just important to remember that everybody's fighting their own battle out there. You don't know what that person may be going through personally. And I'm talking not only veterinarians, but clients too. And so sometimes people, we just need to treat each other with respect and, treat people the way you want to be treated. And we try to provide the best service we possibly can. And, in most circumstances, honestly, and the majority of circumstances, I believe we do. But I would just ask that people just be more cognizant of, respecting other people's space, I guess, and where they're coming from, what their points of view are, that kind of thing. So
Yes, because when I think about veterinarians, especially not only just in the medical field, but just in general, I often view you guys as miracle workers because the pets that you see.
Well, that's putting a little stress on them right there.
exactly.
Yes,
Yes. But that's what, and then you can go back to even when my parents were dealing with the doctors a lot because of illness and stuff, and my mother never wanted to question the doctors because they're God and they know everything. Well, no, they are human.
We're not God.
Everybody's human. Veterinarians are human. Doctors are human. And if you don't agree with something or whatever, there's a way of approaching someone without going ballistic on them, because everybody is human. You have to have that connection with your veterinarian or your doctor to say, hey, yeah, I don't know if I want this, and this is my reasons, and then they can counteract with the reasons why they may think they want that to happen, or that preventative thing, or whatever it may be, and then maybe come to an equal ground on it. But you have to have that give and take and talk to people as humans, everybody.
Agreed.
No matter what field it is, or what walk of life you are in, or how you meet people or greet people. But back to our veterinarians, just talk and listen. And
It's a two-way street, communication, right?
Absolutely.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so there's a reason for that, as they say. So just being able
I have to take note of that.
just being able to communicate in a constructive fashion.
Absolutely.
We understand when people get upset and they're disappointed and things happen, unfortunately. We're not God, right? Unfortunately, patients die. Things happen. Patients get sick. They don't respond to treatment. We try our best, but unfortunately, sometimes things don't go the way we really want them to. So there just has to be communication and understanding amongst the parties concerned that, sometimes, despite what we do or try, we don't get the outcome that we want.
Yep.
So,
And that's the point that I was going to piggyback onto that, or that I was going to make, is that we sometimes, as animal owners, we don't know what's going on with our pet. And so when we take them to the vet and they have to diagnose an animal as something that can't audibly say, I have pain here, I'm having this, stuff like that, where we can, as humans, to our human doctors. Some of us view veterinarians as, oh, they're miracle workers, but we have to remember they are humans too. Veterinarians can make mistakes, just like your human doctor can make a mistake. And not always are we going to be able to find a diagnosis or find it on time to prevent something else. And so I think when people are looking at what they could control in their life, because a lot of times things are out of our control, they look towards, oh, I have this pet, I could be able to control what's going to happen to him or her and take care of it. But at the end of the day, if your pet gets sick, your pet's going to get sick too. What I'm trying to say is, if your pet gets sick, your pet gets sick. There's nothing too much you could do out of your control. So be compassionate and be kind to your veterinarians who are trying to help you with your pet if your pet is ill. They want your
and they
best
have to
attitude.
deliver that hard news, just like
Yeah.
a medical doctor with your family member. This is your family member. It's a four-legged family member, but your veterinarian has to deliver that hard news sometimes, and it's not easy on them either. I'll be very personal. When my dog Lily got sick, like really quickly, within a month and a half, she had declined so much, and Liz had been our vet the whole time. She knew Lily. Lily was a great dog. And I had to make the hard decision for euthanasia because I was having to carry her down the steps and use a scarf on her back legs just to keep her up. It was just a bad, horrible quality of life. And so I made the decision. And I was alone when I brought Lily in. And she had been my, companion for 12 years, my road dog. You can ask my family members how my dogs are treated. They are like my everything. I take them on vacations with me. I take them everywhere. So Liz did the euthanasia in steps, and she talked me through things. And then one of your vet techs, Lisa, who is awesome as well, came in and she stayed with me throughout the whole thing because they did not want me to be alone. And they knew her. And both those girls cried as much as me, sobbing as I was. I held her and sobbed because I didn't want her to go out alone. And then I've heard stories from people that, well, I could never go through that. I love my dog so much. I just, rolled up and let the vet take care of that because I couldn't watch it. It's too hard on me. Well, that's super hard on that dog to be like, they don't know what's going on. And, as sick as they could be, it's hard for them to go out of this world alone. But the vet is the one that's got to be there at the last one. And that's hard on them. It's hard on them because, yes, that was your dog or cat, and you've been with them for so long, and it is hard. But it's a hard choice that we have to make. And we can't just put it all on our vets. They do know our animals too. If you're consistent and you're going to see your veterinarian annually or even more than annually, sometimes they know they know your animal as well. So it's not easy for anybody.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Our duty as humans to our companion animals is to care for them by any means necessary. And even when they get to the end stage of their life or a disease is taking them to their end stage of life early, the humane thing to do for them is to make sure they're not suffering, they're not in misery. And our veterinarians, they take on all that stress too. And so it's not just you as a pet owner. And yes, we understand you're feeling it. Our vet techs, our veterinarians, our receptionists even, they have compassion for you because they know this is the hardest choice you're going to make in that pet's life.
How many vet techs from Perry have adopted our dogs from this shelter in itself, just by taking them in for emergencies, for like they got hit by a car or they got dumped out of a car, they were sick or whatever it may be. So many of our puppies and dogs have come into the veterinary clinic to be serviced and operated on or treated, and they get adopted right from the vet clinic because they are so compassionate there and they love these animals so much that a lot of them, the stories just in itself breaks their heart and they ended up adopting. So we know they're going into great homes, but sometimes they don't even come back to us. They just stay at the vet clinic, get healthy, and they go home with the vet tech and we do the paperwork, from here to there. So, I mean, they're super compassionate people. They got into this business because they love animals. They didn't get into it for maybe I should have been a vet clinic, gone to vet school too, but I think it's a good career, but the biggest part of it was for the compassion they have in their heart for animals. So.
Yes, yeah, and they take on that for euthanizing. They take on that emotional toll.
Absolutely,
they take on that stress that you're feeling. They understand, so they're going through the hard time too, just like you are. But it is something that needs to be done. And one of the things that shocked me, and I know this is not a podcast about euthanasia. We're actually going to have a podcast on euthanasia with Dr. Liz Wolf coming up soon. But a fact that I didn't realize, you can probably attest to, is I was told by a veterinarian that they didn't get a class on euthanasia in vet school, at least for the longest time. Was that really the case?
Oh, yeah. I never had any sort of training in that respect, Sam. Most of what I've learned about it has been learned as I have grown as a veterinarian. And relating to other veterinarians and working together with the other veterinarians to determine what's going to be best for the pet and the client when they make this decision. And we've adapted over the years of how we've approached the whole situation. It's very difficult. It's very difficult on us. It's extremely difficult on the owners. So yeah, you have to have a certain amount of sensitivity to that whole situation, because again, these people are people that we are in many cases friends with, have known for years. We've known the pet for years, and it's very difficult to have to say that final goodbye. So, but we try to do it in a way that's filled with dignity and care, and with no pain or stress, at least as far as for the patient. So.
Yeah, so anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about this specific topic, Not One More Vet is a nonprofit organization. You could go online and look it up, or go to our Animal Friends website, animalfriendsofwyco.com, and click the CHOW Podcast section. We do have links and references to all of our podcasts and our videos, so you know we're not making stuff up. This is legit stuff that's out there, guys, and you could do more reading and research on it. So the segue over from that, how, for operating a veterinary clinic, how do you handle the demands usually that come into the vet clinic from the patients, the clients, the things like that? Patients, owners, I should say.
You know, Sam, I think as you get older, at least in my case, I think, I'm not going to say you get any less sensitive to it, you don't. But I think you just learn how to deal with the stress a little bit more. I always tell myself, you're going to get through this, you're going to get to the end of the day, just take your time. You know, take your time, give the client and the patient the time needed to figure out what's going on and to provide the best care possible. In the long run, that will really help you as a veterinarian feel better, and you're doing the best service to your client by approaching it that way. Yeah, sometimes it can get very hectic. The schedule's crazy. You wonder, how am I going to get to the next appointment? But we have a wonderful support staff, you know, from our receptionists as yourself, through the technicians, the tech assistants, my fellow doctors that we work with. We all support one another. That's how we get through it. And I think it's very important, too, as veterinarians, to have means of stress relief. So having activities outside of work. You know, you can't just work all the time, because you're going to burn yourself out. So whether that's hiking, playing the guitar, you know, reading, cooking, whatever your passion is, you have to have passions outside of the clinic to be able to help to handle that. You know, we got through it. I always tell myself we'll get through it. There's 6 o'clock will come.
Yeah.
We'll get to go home at some point.
I never knew that in my career. It was like, there was no timetable. It was like, you're just here.
Well, that's how it was when I first started.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, you go, go, go.
Yeah, so my
all
activity
morning and
after
all night.
work was
So-
sleep. I was just like, yeah, I
So,
love that activity.
I think that balance is very important. Life-work balance, that's a huge issue in veterinary medicine now. And I think veterinary students are being made aware of that when they're in school, is that you want to join a practice that's you're going to get support, but you're going to be able to appreciate that work-life balance. And that will help with the suicide issue, too, as long as we don't get too stressed out and have other means of releasing that anxiety or that stress. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and to know that you're not alone in this.
Right.
You're not the only veterinarian that's going through these hard times too. That you can reach out to colleagues or the vet field at large to support groups, things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things at Perry, it's always been wonderful, is that we've never really put any sort of constraints on anybody. So, well, you have to produce this much, and you have to do this, and no, we're not going to buy that new piece of equipment. Everybody's always open to ideas and change, and everybody is open to sharing ideas. Okay, I think that's very important for a healthy business, any business really. But it's very important for us as a veterinary practice to be able to do that, because you have to tap on the intellectual ideas of others to be able to help this practice grow and change as the times change. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, to segue off of that into how the times have changed in particular, the COVID phenomenon. I know everyone is tired about talking about COVID.
Yes.
I totally,
Yes.
totally get it. We went through.
It's still out there, Sam.
Yes, it's still out there. We went through 2 to 3 years of lockdowns, of regulations,
Yep.
of everything,
Yep.
and we've come out thankfully on the other side for a
Right.
degree. It's a new world. It's a new norm now.
Right.
But how would you describe the veterinary landscape before COVID, and then what happened during COVID, and what it's done in the long run that you can see for the potential future?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, I mean, we were sailing along pretty well. You know, business was good, everything was great. When COVID hit, we weren't sure how the business was going to go. Were we even going to be able to see patients? Were we going to be considered an essential business? Well, good thing we were, because that enabled us to keep on practicing. However, as I mentioned, we had to change our whole practice procedure and protocol. Clients weren't allowed in the building. Created stress. Clients didn't like that. They wanted to come in with their pet, see what was going on. So you had to call the client, you had to get the history, you'd look at the pet, you'd call the client back and you say, well, this is what's going on, this is what we would recommend. And the client would say, yes, no, let's do this, let's not, let's do that. So then you'd call back and say, well, it's going to cost this much. And then you do some blood work or whatever, you have to call them back with that result. So it just created a real log jam as far as getting people through the clinic, and it created a lot of stress. I think during that time you had a lot of people that were staying home, they were lonely. Many people had funds that they were able to use, and many of them bought pets or acquired pets during that time to keep them company. In some cases it may have been a little ill-advised. Then maybe they weren't, as Kelly, you alluded to, do your research, do your homework, learn what you need to know about the pet before you get it. So there were many situations where those pets were acquired, but really not much thought potentially given into how to care and the other expenses that might occur. But nonetheless, it kept us extremely busy. And it was a great thing when we were able to allow clients back into the building again, because we could talk to them directly and we didn't have to make the phone calls, and we didn't have to take an hour or two per patient. We could streamline the situation a lot better. But we did run into the situation where there was a number of pets that we were trying to take care of, and we had a lack of veterinarians. And I would tell you that we probably still have a lack of veterinarians, although things are getting better. And so it just created a lot more stress on everybody. And I think that's gotten a lot better, though, I would say, over the last year or two. We've kind of come out of that, and we've been able to handle the workload much better, I think. And I would speak for pretty much all of our clinics at this point. So
Yeah. I think a interesting perspective that our viewers should know regarding how veterinary clinics, not just PeriVet, but veterinary clinics in general, had to operate during the COVID lockdowns. There are strict regulations on who was even able to enter into the building, enter out of the building. You had to do sign-ins, you had to do checks, just like you probably had to do at your workplace. So we were very limited in what we can bring into the clinic, what we can't. Vet techs and even sometimes receptionists and doctors would have to go out, bring the pets in, take them out. Your normal appointment time, that could have been 20 minutes, now it's extended to 30 to 40 minutes. So with that, it crams up the day where normally you can see, just throwing this out of the top of my head here, like 50 pets in a day, now you're limited to 25 pets in a day. Things got cut in half. Because of the rules and regulations, some veterinarians that were already thinking about retirement, well, this is a great time to retire because you didn't want to deal with all that stuff, which I totally understand. It was hard for us to deal with it too, just actively in it. So you had vet clinics that were shutting down. You had vet clinics that weren't able to keep up with supply and demand and were forced to shut down. And then some places like PeriVet, who kept themselves head above water. It was a struggle, but they did it. They absorbed some clients, and it was just hard to maintain that balance when you have a shortage of veterinarians. But then, as you just said, people at home, maybe they were bored, maybe they weren't bored, and they were just thinking, oh, this is the time if I'm going to get a pet, I'm going to do it now because I'm forced to stay home. You have more pets, you have less vets, and that does not create a good
Balance.
Yes,
Right.
in life. And so the struggle was very, very real during those 2 to 3 years of the COVID lockdowns of trying to maintain your quality of care, open up, keep your clinic open for staff, for clients, for pets, and also balancing, oh, someone just got 2 new pets. Good for you, but we're going to do the best we can to give you the same quality care we had before COVID. And that was a struggle.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things we prided ourselves in, is that we still felt like we were giving those pets the care they needed. We weren't, as you say, streamlining anything. One of the sad things, talking about euthanasia, can you imagine, in those days that many people weren't even able to be with their pets when they were being euthanized?
I have
and that
pets,
was a sad thing.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. So fortunately that's changed. But we got through it, and I think we're stronger for it now, and things are much better, I think, now than they were.
And I think that
Hope it never, ever, ever goes back to what it was.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Yes, it was.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, to that point, I think the industry in turn has learned something from this whole phenomenon, knowing that, like, if something like this should happen again, another COVID strain, something else that the government decides, oh, we need to lock down or deem who's essential or non-essential, which I'm not a fan of anyways, but it is an essential service no matter what.
It's funny that liquor stores stayed open. That they
Yes.
were considered essential.
Yes. But
They kind of were. No, I'm just-
yes. My personal philosophy is, if this is your business that you're trying to provide for your family, it's not the government's job to tell you if you're essential or not.
Absolutely. The government needs to stay out of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
But in reality, that's what happened, unfortunately. And I think the veterinary industry and the landscape at large learned a thing or two on how to adapt to it. You were thrown in the midst of it, but heaven forbid in our lifetime something like that should ever happen in the future.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
learned some tools,
Yeah.
learned tricks.
And the other thing that that happened was many veterinary students were in college during that time, and unfortunately, because of the pandemic, their cases, they didn't get a lot of hands-on. Dealing, working up cases, doing surgery, things like that. So as a consequence, we had a lot of veterinarians students graduating who didn't have much experience. So it's kind of been
Hard to do
in many
surgery
cases,
online.
learn on the job,
Yeah.
as you go. They've done a great job of adapting, and I would say that the young veterinarians that we have in our practices are doing tremendous. And I think that's key, to be able to bring young people in to take over the business and keep it going.
Well, it's key that not everybody retired, and you had the OGs to teach the young, young ones to come in,
Right.
the hands-on stuff. So
Right.
that's super important.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm going back to some slang from my previous career, but yeah. So
The old guards, huh?
well, officers anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it's helped with at least a couple of good things have come out of the pandemic years. Is it's helped with telemedicine. It's helped with different advancements in technology and how to be able to streamline at the clinic certain procedures that you just didn't have adequate time to do with before, and now you were forced to do it. And so there are benefits to everything, no matter how tragic it is in life, but we don't want to go through that again. Please.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. No fun.
no. Well,
Change is never fun, anyways. In the beginning, people
no.
really have a rough time with change until you really get used to it. But
Especially-
that was slammed in your face change
That-
that most people were not on board with at all. I can speak for myself, but it's something that we were forced to do, and it was a tough time for everybody to have to adapt to that kind of living. So
Yep. And there's no easing into this, as you just said.
No,
It was in
All of a sudden they were
7
telling
days.
us
All of a
that
sudden things were shut down, and we were
Camping
like, what do
World
we do?
got a good jump in there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
A lot of campers that were bought
Yep.
back then, but
Yep.
holy cow.
When the pandemic was first hitting, I was actually with a coworker of mine from the vet clinic. A couple of us had gotten together and we're doing a movie night, and I don't know why they picked that movie about a pandemic. They did. I forgot what it was called. Contagions, I think it was called.
Oh,
we were
wow.
sitting there, we're watching, we're in the
That's
middle of it, and
crazy.
we're like, holy smokes, it's crazy. And then we heard all the alarms go off, and they announced schools are shut down. I mean, it was all in live time, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I remember, Sam, one of the first days of the pandemic, driving home from the Batavia clinic. I live, where I live, so driving from Batavia to where my home is. There's hardly any traffic.
I was
It's like,
driving to
where are the
Rochester,
trucks? What the-
believe me.
I'm on Route 63. You know, that's a huge truck traffic. It's like, it was scary, you know,
Yeah.
just not seeing that commerce going.
That's the only thing that I enjoyed about the pandemic was because I drove to Rochester every day, and 490 was clear as a
Empty,
whistle. Boy,
yeah.
I could get to Rochester in
like
no
you're-
time at all.
It's like you're in this dystopian, apocalyptic future, a movie.
Yeah.
You're like, what is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I think the next part of our podcast here we're going to segue into is questions from our members. And so we'll only get to a couple of them today. Let's see. So we have Jody from Perry, and I think we touched upon some of these too. So if they're a little repetitive from our conversation, we'll just piggyback right onto that, or elaborate, I guess. On the changing landscape of veterinary medicine, do you see a lot more people not being able to afford veterinary medicine for their animals, meaning that less people can afford to spay and neuter their animals and everyday care?
I don't believe so, Sam. And maybe I'm a little jaded because I'm in the clinic all the time and as busy as we are for the most part. There are low-cost spay and neuter clinics available. There are grants available for people. I work in our Batavia office predominantly, and there are grants definitely available for people to take advantage of to supply for the basic needs, spays, neuters, basic vaccines, things like that. I would say there's maybe a little more pushback sometimes about doing certain diagnostics or certain imaging, whatever it is that the veterinarian wants to do. There may be a little more pushback from the client there that maybe they don't have the funds to do it. So sometimes, so you have to adapt to that. You have to change your approach and how you want to deal with that case. You may not be doing Cadillac medicine, but maybe you're doing Volkswagen medicine. But still, you hope that the outcome is going to be good.
Yeah.
So, but I really feel like, for the most part, our clientele does do the best they can to take care of their pet. And I think we do a good job of not overselling stuff. You know, we do the basics very well, but we can also tailor based on what the situation is, you know, economically or whatever. So I think it's important.
Well, I think it's that point to piggyback off of that too is when your economy changes, it affects everything. It's not just going to the grocery store. It also affects your vet expenses, what the clinic has to pay in order to get the services that they want to maintain. Things go up for them, things go up for you. You have a good economy, great. Everything's getting lower, everything's more manageable for your budget, that's great. But when you are in a bad economy session, then it trickles down to every aspect of your life, unfortunately. And so what you've said about grants, there are grants and programs and things available out there. A lot of times it's just calling your local animal control or calling your local veterinarian and say, is there a way I could be able to get some help with something like this? Do you know of a place that offers grants, that offers low-cost spay and neuter programs, things of that nature? And there are tools out there.
That's back to the communication lines have to be open for the best treatment of your family pet, whether it be a dog or a cat or a ferret or whatever it is. If you have communication with your veterinarian, there's always some kind of help out there if you're economically squeezed, because we all are seeing it. Every aspect that you have to do in this economy right now, from groceries to gas to whatever, there is help out there. You just have to communicate and somebody will find something for you. And veterinarians are very well versed and up on times of what's going on. Your animal control officer will be as well. So reach out to someone if you need help. But the bottom line is you just have to do at least the basic needs for your furry companions. The spaying and neutering is so important for not only the diseases that they could get, mammogram, testicular cancers, the unwanted litters, the dogs that get hit by cars, like I had said in videos before or podcasts before, according to Spay USA, 85% of all dogs hit by a vehicle are unaltered, which means unspayed or unneutered. Just because when a female goes in heat, and it's probably more popular for the male because when they still have their testicular parts, their testosterone,
Yep.
they're gonna try to search for that dog in heat, and up to 10 miles they can smell that. So I don't care how trained your dog is. You're not training them into not trying that urge to get
Their
to.
natural
instinct.
instinct.
It is. It's an instinct that you can't train through. So they still have the potential of going on the run to find that female in heat, and the potential of getting hit by a car, especially in our busy world nowadays with traffic. Just take that little expense and get it done, and we the veterinarians, the animal control officers, whoever is out there, will try to help you with the cost effect. If you would just do it, we'll help you. Just do it.
Yes. Helen from Perry would like to know, what role do veterinarians play in public health?
Oh, great question. Key roles, and that goes everywhere from food safety. So there are, situations on farm where we are making sure that the protocols are being met as far as disease control, as far as providing clean, healthy, wholesome food for the public. There are veterinarians who work in the meat processing, food processing industries to make sure the food chain, the food supply is safe. We as companion animal veterinarians ensuring that vaccinations are up to date, such as rabies, which is a huge one, leptospirosis, which is potentially a zoonotic disease that humans could pick up from animals, roundworms. There are many things that can be transmitted from pets to humans. So establishing a good relationship with a veterinarian helps prevent all of those from being a concern or a problem. So.
Thank you. So, June from Boston, Massachusetts, actually, she wants to know, let's see, how long do veterinarian schools, how long does it take in veterinary school?
Veterinary school is 4 years. Most people go to a college for 4 years prior to going to veterinary school. So it's usually 4 years of undergraduate and 4 years of veterinary college. Some choose to go on and specialize, so they might do an internship for a year and then into a residency program if they wanted to specialize in medicine or internal medicine or surgery, whatever the case may be. So, but basically your general practitioner veterinarian goes through 8 years of college. So.
All right, so Audie from Castile, he wants to know, are there opportunities for international veterinary practice? Like, how do you see that? I guess the question he's trying to get at is, are you aware of anything that's different from like outside of the U.S. versus inside the U.S.? I know that Perry Vet does serve some clients outside of the U.S. border sometimes here or there. So how do you feel as like rules, regulations? Do you have to know something, be of a certain accreditation for something versus another? Anything involving that are you aware of?
So if you're wanting to be more involved with international medicine type of thing, one of the things you have to be is accredited. And as an accredited veterinarian in the United States, that enables you to be able to, for example, write health certificates for animals going internationally.
Okay.
It enables you to do certain testing on animals that may be going internationally or interstate. Animals coming from other countries, such as Europe, they have certain standards that they must meet prior to coming to the United States. We do have situations where there may be international movement of livestock, for example, or livestock products. Again, those are typically handled by an accredited veterinarian who ensures that the regulations are being met as far as those animals crossing the border, that they don't have any diseases that could be introduced into that country. Every country has their own requirements for what that animal might need going there. And so the accredited veterinarian assures that those needs or those requirements are met. I can't think of really any other sort of international aspect of veterinary medicine unless you were maybe in academia or if you were working in industry, something like that. And those disciplines, there's probably more call for international involvement. So.
Is there something that's like in the veterinary perspective, like from human medicine, there's like Doctors Without Borders, or there's things like that where a doctor could travel outside to a place.
Yeah,
there's something for that for vets too.
Yeah, there are. I think there's a Christian veterinary mission, for example. It was quite popular when I was in veterinary school. It afforded an opportunity for students to go to less served areas of the world to provide basic needs such as neuters, spays, vaccinations, things like that. So there is definitely opportunity. I'm pretty certain there's opportunity now for students to get involved with that. So so it's certainly out there. So.
And I think the only other question I could see that we probably haven't touched upon were in regards to veterinary education. And I think we've already mentioned a little bit of it, but on average, Richard from Fillmore wants to know, how much does veterinary education usually cost?
Ooh, great question. Yeah. This day and age, by the time you figure out, and it really depends on where you go to veterinary school. Some vet schools are more expensive than others. If you go internationally, for example, there are several little island schools, Ross University as an example, they can tend to be a little bit more expensive because you have that international travel, you're providing for your room and board, your food, you're paying for your education. I have heard stories of students graduating from veterinary college with up to $300,000 in debt. So it creates a huge issue because when you have that amount of debt and you're trying to service that debt on a starting veterinary salary, that can put you in the hole pretty easily. You might be eating ramen noodles for a while until you can kind of get your feet underneath of you. So fortunately, when I went to vet school, it was much cheaper. And at the time I went to vet school in North Carolina, I was a North Carolina resident, and I was the tuition there was probably $1,400 a semester. Whereas now, some schools it's $40,000 a semester, and then you've got books, room and board, everything else on top of it. So it's an expensive proposition.
And I don't want to pay for your vet
So that's
education.
Yeah, and that's certainly something, and I always tell young people, high school students, whomever, that come to the clinic that are learning about veterinary medicine, I always try to make them aware that, hey, it's going to be expensive for you to go to vet school. Are you prepared to have a mortgage-sized debt when you graduate from vet school and start, I think average starting salary for veterinarians now might be 70, 80,000, something like that. So by the time you pay that debt and you pay your living expenses in this day and age, it doesn't leave a whole lot left to, for other things. So, so that's a great question. It's a huge issue. So,
one of the things I will say to close upon this is that I've always been proud that Perry Veterinary Clinic is very accepting of new graduates from schools, because I know that there's a lot of times where someone is new and graduated, some jobs are looking for 1 year experience already, 2 years experience, things like that. Perry Vet is great at like a teaching type of a clinic too.
Right.
And we've had some amazing veterinary technicians come through, and Perry Vet's been able to give them that hand to say, let me help you get started in your experience.
Yeah, one of the great opportunities for us and for the student is to come and do an externship with us, whether it be small or large animal. We offer both. And that is a great way for them to get exposed to the practicality of veterinary medicine. And we learn a lot about the student, and we learn a lot about what they're learning. And we've had some great students come through. Some have stayed and worked with us, some have moved on. But they've just, basically they're our lifeblood for the long-term health of the clinic.
Yeah,
So.
and it's great that you're giving you're contributing to a greater purpose out there too than just Wyoming County or just our local 4-clinic veterinary hospital or veterinary clinic. that you're a stepping stone for someone else to continue doing great things in the field.
Right.
So,
Yep.
well, Dr. Peter, thank you so much for coming
You're
on
welcome.
board to this podcast and
Yep.
for doing the educational video and doing all of this. It's really been a pleasure to have you here, and I always look forward to working with you, so I can't wait to more days like that.
Okay.
That was great.
Thank you, Sam.
And if you're just listening, you can't see, but if you are watching this and listening, you'll see all sorts of our new T-shirts, styles, colors, the popcorn, the meat sticks, the candy bars, water bottles. We have our shop and support set up here at the shelter, so feel free to stop down to the Wyoming County Animal Shelter on Route 19 and buy a T-shirt from us that helps a dog for spay and neutering and vaccinations. And that's
Yeah,
it.
and
So
reach out to
we
us,
really
too.
appreciate that.
If you're not in the immediate area and you want to show your support by purchasing a T-shirt or any of our shop and support items, email us, reach out to us through Facebook or anything like that, and we'll see what we could do to help, because we want to get our name out there and get the word out there too. So Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the CHOW Podcast, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CHOW Podcast, hosted by Animal Friends of Wyoming County. To learn more about us, visit our website at www.animalfriendsofwyco.com. And if you're interested in adopting a dog, please call the Wyoming County Animal Shelter at 585-786-8938. This has been a production of Knox Luna Films, LLC.